What is going on, guys? Matt O'Leary back with another video. Today I want to talk about what the Jets have to do differently on offense going forward, more specifically in week 3 against the New England Patriots, but changes that have to be made to this offense immediately right now by Nathaniel Hackett. Yesterday we talked about the offensive line and whether or not, they have a long leash or who's going to make any changes there. So that video is going to take care of the offensive line. This video is going to be more schematic things or like usage that the Jets could do. So I know that in the comments going to be like, well, change up the offensive line. And like, yeah, sure, you could absolutely do that. That could absolutely be part of that. But this is going to be focused on like personnel usage and which players at like the skill positions the Jets can utilize to their best and fullest potential. So while I mention that, the two things that I'm going to talk about to start are not necessarily the sexy skill position, but things that actually matter that the New York Jets kind of just threw out the window in week 2, and I think is a big reason why this New York Jets offense struggled so badly. And that's using a blocking tight end and the freaking fullback. Number one, if you're going to keep Nick Bawden on the roster as one of the 53 guys, right? Like, we could debate till the cows come home if carrying a fullback is worth it or not, right? Like, we could discuss that. But specifically, if you are going to carry one, which the Jets are, you better then use that fullback. And I get it, Bawden plays special teams and he gives you other value, but 2 plays, I know they didn't run the ball or to run much on offense in the play calling department. It was like 80-something to 40-something. The Dallas Cowboys had the ball significantly more than the New York Jets, but 2 plays with the fullback in when you are going to your backup quarterback against a vaunted pass rush, and you would think you want to establish a run game. Nick Bawden only plays in 2 plays. What's the point? Why do you have him on the 53 if you're only going to use him twice in a game? It doesn't make any sense. He has to be in there more. If you're going to carry him, use him. And the same thing could be said about Jeremy Ruckert, who is their best blocking tight end. CJ Uzomah was utilized more as the blocking tight end in this game against Dallas, and he stunk. He was really, really bad. Jeremy Ruckert only played 5 plays in the game after absolutely demolishing in the run game in week 1. He was a big part of the Brees really long the really long run for like 80 whatever yards. He was a big part of that, setting up 2 key blocks on that play. And on one of his 5 plays, he cleared a nice hole in this game for Jeremy Ruckert. So he has to get on the field to help in the blocking game as a lead run blocker, whatever, or even if you just want to use a tight end to help out Dwayne Brown, who's getting carved up like a Christmas ham so far through 2 weeks, put him on the left side next to Dwayne Brown and have him help out with Matt Judon. Or in weeks gone by, whatever, Leonard Floyd in week 1 or in week 2, Micah Parsons, but specifically in week 3, Matt Judon's no slouch. It doesn't get any easier for this New York Jets offensive line. They're going up against a really good pass rusher. Sure, it's not the Dallas Cowboys deep rotation, and they're really, and Judon's not on the same level as Micah Parsons, but Judon's a really good player, and that Pats defense is good. So you got to be able to help mitigate the pressure, and utilizing a tight end, a fullback, more freaking heavy sets, way too much 11 personnel. Way too much 11 personnel from the New York Jets in the game against the Dallas Cowboys. And here's a screen grab, which kind of segues into the next one here. Why is CJ Uzomah being lined up as a wide receiver? That is not a serious threat. Everyone in the world knows that that's a decoy. He's not... he's not the best route running tight end that they have. If you're going to do that, do it with Tyler Conklin. Or I would rather do it with Jeremy Ruckert even than having to do it with CJ Uzomah. It doesn't make sense. He's not a receiving threat. Can you get even actually strike that? Don't use the tight end. Why not get Mecole Hardman or Xavier Gibson, your 2 wide receivers who are insanely explosive, out on the field? Gibson has 1 snap on offense through 2 games, and it came in week 1. And again, I'm not saying like you're force-feeding Xavier Gibson the ball, but can he's explosive. Can you get him a touch? Can he touch the football once a game and maybe make something happen? Hardman only played 14 snaps on offense, all of which came in the Dallas Cowboys game in garbage time. He wasn't being utilized in the first 3 quarters of that Cowboys game. Then Garrett Wilson gets the wind knocked out of him, and Mecole Hardman comes in. He's got to be on the field more. Again, like with Aaron Rodgers gone, Randall Cobb should not be as high up on the pecking order. And Mecole Hardman's explosive in the run. Give him a ball on an end around. Throw him a screen and let him do things with the ball in his hands. You bring in this explosive player who's supposed to, replace Braxton Berrios, and he hasn't been used. And I get it. It's only been 2 games, and obviously things changed in that first game against the Buffalo Bills, but specifically, like looking at this last game against Dallas, I don't know what Nathaniel Hackett's game plan was for this game. I would have been trying to use my speed at the wide receiver position instead of going 3 wide with CJ Uzomah out there and these empty backfield sets against the Dallas Cowboys pass rush. In what world is that going to work? And I'm not an offensive coordinator, obviously. I'm not an NFL coach, but come on. Like, anyone with half a brain is going to be able to know that, like, you should not go empty with Zach Wilson, who holds on to the ball forever, against a great defensive line, and not give any of your tackles who've been struggling any help at trying to get those edge rushers. So those are the first 2 things that need to change. Then number 3 is more Breece Hall. In no world should he only be getting 4 carries. And I get it. I understand. They didn't run that many plays on offense, and then they went down in the game. But it's not like Zach Wilson threw the ball 40 times in this game. Breece Hall has to have more than 4 carries. And more specifically, if you just look at where they've been through 2 weeks, Dalvin Cook 44 snaps to Breece Hall's 33. That needs to start, the gap needs to start closing. And I'm not saying Breece Hall run the ball 20 times a game. That is unrealistic at this point in his recovery process. But if you have to run the ball 30 times, they need to do it with Hall more. He had 10 carries in week 1. There's no reason he can't be hanging out in that 10 to 12 range for the first few weeks. And Michael Carter needs more reps. There's no way Michael Carter can be worse than what Dalvin Cook has shown you through the first 2 weeks of the year. Look at the comparison between what Breece Hall has done so far and where Dalvin Cook ranks among the qualified running backs. It's bad. It hasn't been very good. And I get it. The offensive line struggled, and it's not like Breece Hall had this stellar game in week 2, but I think you got to get Michael Carter more involved. At least he has a little bit more explosiveness. Right now, Dalvin doesn't have or look like he has that explosiveness in his game right now. Maybe that changes as he continues to ramp up, right? Like he didn't play a lot in he didn't play at all in the preseason, didn't have a ton of training camp time, similar to Dwayne Brown. So maybe that's someone who ramps up over time, but he hasn't been very impactful for the first 2 games. And if you're going to run the ball more, Michael Carter, or hell, like, is it time to activate Izzy? Like, I understand maybe having 4 running backs active isn't the best practices for, a roster management. But if your game plan, which I think it should be, a run-heavy, screen pass-orientated, like getting the running backs significantly more involved, it might be time to see what Izzy Abanikanda can do. He's an explosive home run threat. We saw it in the preseason. He had a very good preseason. I think it's time to maybe give him a look because they need to change some things up with how they're utilizing their running back so far. And last but certainly not least, Garrett Wilson, 7 catches on 13 targets through 2 games is not enough. And again, I understand, like, they didn't run a ton of plays in week 2, but still, like, he should be having close to double-digit targets a game. And even if Wilson's only throwing the ball 25 to 30 times in the game, that's the window, I think, for Zach Wilson. You throw the ball 25 to 30 times, and you're running the ball like 30 times in the game. Running closer to 60 plays instead of 45 plays, or wherever they were at in week 2. But Garrett Wilson is just way too talented to only have 13 targets through 2 games. That's 6.5 targets on average per game. That's not enough. It should be, again, not double digits every week. I don't see a world where that's possible. But closer to like 8, 9, 10 targets a game. That should be the number. He should be having 7 catches a game. It shouldn't be 7 catches through 2 games. He only had 2 catches this past week, and 1 was for a touchdown. I get it. The quarterback play is going to make a big difference. It is going to make a massive difference, but they have to find ways to get the ball into the hands of your best players on offense. Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall are that, so that's why I called them 2 out specifically on why they need to get the ball more. But even beyond that, like, stop using as much CJ Uzomah and Dalvin Cook, the veterans who have seemed to be over the hill at this point. Mix in some more Jeremy Ruckert, who's a better blocker than CJ Uzomah. More of the fullback in formations that yield the fullback and someone else in the backfield to clear up lanes and pick up more yardage. And how about try to mix in the explosive wide receivers that you have on the roster and Mecole Hardman and Xavier Gibson. That would be my changes that the New York Jets have to make offensive schematically. Obviously, offensive line changes could potentially come as well, but I want to hear from you. What would you change that Nathaniel Hackett is doing right now, and what does he need to do going forward? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please subscribe if you're new. Give a like before you go, and I'll catch you next time.